Success in Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
And welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. It's Kerry, Lutz. Government numbers, can you believe them? Are they real? Are they deliberately skewed? Are they outdated the day that they're released? And what about those revisions? Are they worth looking at? Well, here to talk about that is Chris Martenson of peakprosperity.com. Chris, welcome back.
Kerry, it's good to be back with you.
Always a pleasure. You know that. So looking at last Friday's job numbers, nothing like releasing a significant number when the markets are about ready to shut down for a holiday weekend. So 128,000 new jobs, and the bartender and waitress economy just keeps rolling along, right?
That's right. Everybody's eating out, presumably using those hefty wage gains they've been getting.
Right. Yeah, those great wage gains. They just are just wonderful, right? Well, McDonald's is, I read, increasing wages among all, I guess, their company-owned stores. Walmart also giving everybody a hefty increase. So everything is fine, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, $7.25 an hour to $8.25, maybe $9 an hour. Let's add that up. You know, you could probably, if you had 4 people working, afford to live in an average rental right now.
Hey, so the economy's fine, right? We just
afford to an apartment. You're good.
Yeah, we're chugging along, right? And minimum wage, right? All good.
Oh, Kerry, you know, it's we've gotten past farce into pure comedy at this point on these numbers. You know, the government is famously, I don't even want to say inept, but because there's actually a purpose to all of this, but they are famously good at producing numbers that consistently tell a more rosy picture than is actually the case. And they do this for obvious reasons. You know, political pressure is a very powerful thing, and the directors and the people who are the appointed officials who oversee the big government agencies, which would include the big statistical agencies, the Bureau of Economic Analysis, Bureau of Labor Statistics. You're looking at even the Energy Information Agency. They're not immune to political pressure at all, and they haven't been for many, many administrations stretching back to Lyndon Johnson. And so, yeah, you have to take all these things with a grain of salt. It got so bad, I'm sure you saw this, but the CEO of Gallup said that their numbers and the statistics they collect as a polling organization are so wildly different from what the government is reporting about employment and unemployment that he called these things a big lie, the government statistics, right? Mm-hmm. You know, by the time you have the head of a polling agency willing to make such an incendiary statement, he's probably got A, pretty good case, and B, he's pretty annoyed, you know?
Right.
And that's what it is. It's annoying that these numbers are so deviant from reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are quite deviant, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. I use that word very carefully.
Yeah, so obviously they're not making the numbers look worse, are they?
Never.
So they're whitewashing the truth, right? Is that what's happening? And the truth is worse than what the numbers they're releasing.
Absolutely. So just to take one example, I've been tracking this very carefully in the January, then the February, then the March releases for the employment report, where they're talking about the unemployment numbers. And in the mining sector, which is the sector that encompasses oil and gas exploration, they had noted that there was 1,900 job losses in that category in January. There was about 1,000 more in February. And they collectively came up with maybe 10,000 total after back revising those January, February, March. But let's recall that we have probably close to 80,000 announced job cuts in that sector from private industries. So to believe what the government is saying, you have to believe that those 80,000 were announced, but about 70,000 other jobs were created in that sector to balance out at a minus 10,000. It's like, no, that's not what's happening in the oil patch right now. It is just a bloodbath, and jobs are getting harder to come by. And let's not forget, for every high-paying oil sector job you lose, you probably lose one, maybe almost two associated jobs that were in support of that.
Yeah, not good news to say the least. And if you're in the oil sector, you know exactly what we're talking about. If you're in Houston, if you're in North Dakota, if you're in Louisiana, places like that, right? This is bad news.
Well, absolutely, and this is what happens in a oil bust. I was going to say shale bust, but we haven't had one of those so far. But yeah, this is the simple reality in the oil patch. And I read this even. There was a Fed official came out the other day and said, "Oh yeah, the oil is not going to really be a huge growth engine, I guess, for the economy going forward. But let's just remember, all this beautiful, wonderful technology is letting us get more oil out of every well." And there's so much misinformation in that. It wasn't technology that unlocked those oil plays; it was price, and nobody can make money at these prices in any of the shale plays that I look at. They fudge some numbers and say they can, but the truth is they can't. And so it wasn't technology that unlocked it. And the big lie is this idea that we are getting more oil out of every well because of technology. We are not. You can check the data, look at all the per well data stuff. David Hughes does a great job. He has tens of thousands of wells in each of his databases, tracking each well individually by year. So you have that vintage cohort so you can see what's happening. And guess what? We're getting the same amount out of each well in 2014 as we did 2013, as we did in 2012, as we did in 2011, right?
Right.
And so there are all these stories out there, Kerry, that are just wrong. But people love them because they say, everything's good. It's going to get better. I'm not going to have to change my lifestyle or worry about anything.
Yeah. Well, everybody wants to believe that everything's fine, right?
They do. But, everything is pretty much not fine. We can look at that on a bunch of dimensions and look, even just environmentally. I mean, you look at the drought that's going on in California, or the fact that the sardine fishery is about to completely collapse in the whole Pacific Ocean. That's bad news. When you take out the bottom of the food pyramid, and that's due to overfishing, by the way, that is just stupid fisheries management. And, when you take out the bottom of the food pyramid, suddenly you notice bad things happen. You lose the top of the food pyramid, which includes salmon, which includes tuna, which includes sea lions, pelicans, all these things that are actually important pieces. And so this is why I feel that one of the biggest disservices we're doing to ourselves as a nation by propping up equities, constantly reinforcing the idea that a high stock market means everything is okay. It somehow prevents a lot of people from saying and having traction around the idea that maybe things aren't okay. And we should talk about that and maybe adjust what we're doing before we just keep doing the same thing and something collapses, whether it's a fishery in the Pacific Ocean, whether it's farming in California, or whether eventually, Kerry, it's going to be a complete collapse of our financial system.
I was having a conversation during the holidays. I was away in Arizona, and both with somebody who was an arch Republican and another one who was a totally fanatical Democrat, saying, like, look, you guys, they're just trying to divide you. They're just trying to make you guys fight. Like, I'm more concerned about the economic collapse than I am about abortion rights or whatever the cause du jour is, women, the war on women, the so-called war on women. This is about our survival here. This isn't about anything else. I don't care about any of these pet causes of either political party. They're just fiction. They're just distractions. Aren't you more concerned about the survival of the country than you are about this one fighting with that one? And politics is just nonsense. Can't you see this? And, they were still just wanted to fight with each other and go over the talking points. And it was just, Chris, totally disheartening that they couldn't understand what was really going on here.
So let me ask you, were each of them bringing a lot of emotion to the conversation? Were they really charged up?
Yeah, well, especially the so-called Democrat was really bent out of shape over all this, Chris.
Absolutely. Yeah. So here's my rule of life. When emotions become part of the conversation, it means you have a belief system at play. And here's the wonderful thing about belief systems. They're totally immune to new data. And so, when I'm with either a liberal or a conservative and they're really getting, no, you have to understand if we get this person in, it will be better. And I see that emotion. I know I'm talking to a belief system, which means there's no point in Kerry having any more fact-based conversations around that.
I really didn't even want to get into it, but he started saying, Scott Walker is an embarrassment. I said, what about this guy, Jerry Brown, Governor Moonbeam? We got rid of him. And here he is. They bring him back 20 years later. And he says, yeah, but California is doing better now. I said, no, it's not. The place is falling apart. They're having a drought. And all he wants to do is shut off your water and make you flush the toilet less times during the day. Doesn't sound like a solution to me. But yeah, you're right. I should have just gone and had another glass of Chardonnay and just forgotten about it. Because like you say, you're dealing with a belief system. You're not dealing with a fact-based, rational human being, right?
That's in a nutshell, I think, what's leading us down this path to hell if we don't get off it eventually. And it's because we can't have good fact-based discussions that just talk about what reality is. And, you get your best information and you gather it as impartially as you can, and you look at where you are. And eventually, a rational person would have to go, hey, we should change something here. So, people ask me why I'm so bearish on the economy, even though it seems to be doing okay. It's like, I admit it seems to be doing okay. But here are some facts, right? The world now has $57 trillion more dollars of debt on top of it than it did at the start of the crisis. If the first crisis was precipitated by three simple words, which were too much debt, how do we feel about having 57 trillion additional debt dollars for 200 trillion total debt dollars, on top of which we have a quadrillion dollars, maybe more, maybe less, but some big number notionally of derivatives layered on top, all of which are going to be perfectly good, valid insurance until you need to use them. And then they will become worthless insurance because there's no possible way of paying off of bets that are that large that go wrong. And so everybody's sort of skating along, pretending as if this is all going to turn the corner. But can't we? Here's some facts. Global growth is as weak as it's been in a long time. The last 14 years, we've seen way below what we would call trend global growth in the economy. I don't think global growth is ever coming back. But even if it did, we would have to admit to ourselves that somewhere, there's a limit to how much growth can actually happen. So when's the right time to start saying we have a system that's dedicated to growth? In fact, it's dependent on it. In fact, it threatens to collapse when it doesn't have it. But we're in a system that obviously can't grow forever. Whether that's 100 more years or 10 more years, we can argue about. But we can argue about the idea that eventually you run out of oil. Eventually you run out of sardines. Eventually you run out of fresh water. Eventually these things happen, and they're happening everywhere. So when do we get to say, hey, here's some data. What's our plan if endless infinite growth can't happen? We don't have a plan. Our only plan is to stick the gas pedal down a little harder, throw more debt into the whole thing, and just focus obsessively on this idea of when are we going to get our growth back? And, to me, well, all we've done is we've just added additional pressures on the system that when the system finally breaks, it is going to be horrendous. The equivalent of falling off the 30th rung of a ladder instead of the third rung. And that's what the Federal Reserve is giving to us. And it's why I'm so annoyed with central bankers, banking, and the politicians that revolving door support that whole system.
Oh, it's just like daylight savings time. It's about as effective as daylight savings time, central banking. That's the way I look at it, right? You just
but they're making things worse. They really are. And the worst of it for me, Kerry, is that because they print money and create the appearance of a raging party, at least for a while, they do short circuit a lot of conversations that we need to be having. People will just, give you that 1,000-yard stare when you say, hey, I think there's some economic troubles coming, and they don't want to hear it because it's not in their belief system. And these people are going to be so disappointed when this all breaks. It's just going to be a total shock to their system because they are holding onto a set of beliefs that will be proven to be false. Just like, if you suddenly revealed to somebody that, rubbing a certain statue in a certain way did not cause your basketball team to win the game.
No, that doesn't work. I didn't know that. Yeah, I did not know that.
Big shock, when your team loses. But I rubbed his toe. Didn't work out.
Yeah, and you got a lot of wear and tear on that statue in Caesar's Palace, and to think that it might not work, that's really disheartening.
It is, because then what are you left with? Your belief system crumbles, and this is what we find is that when people's larger belief systems crumble, they go through an emotional set of responses to that, not an intellectual set. Very, very few people through insight can go, oh, I guess that my total unwavering faith in the Democratic Party was misplaced. Allow me to readjust. I'm good to go. Right? That'll be a crushing moment. They will experience despair, anger,
cognitive
dissonance, all of that. And so here's why this is so important. When the USSR collapsed, that was an economic superpower of a time, and it collapsed, and there was a big, ugly readjustment process. But in those 8 years after it collapsed, 54% of all deaths recorded in Russia were due to alcohol. And what that means is that the people there, principally middle-aged men who formerly used to provide and protect for their family, lost the provide angle of that, and they lost their story on what made them important, and so they started drinking. And we see this a lot right now, Kerry. I see people checking out because they can't handle the cognitive dissonance that the world around them is not meshing with their personal belief system, and they can't adjust. So people check out all kinds of ways, right? We play too many video games, we drink too much, we eat too much, we eat too little, we watch too much TV, have too much sex, whatever the thing is, right? These distractions. Yeah. And so that's why I understand now, like when you see a Kardashian video get 30 million views in a couple of days, like that's just our distraction. People need distractions, so.
And don't forget about pharmaceutical drug abuse.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And antidepressants and all of this stuff. That's a coping mechanism, right?
Absolutely. We have a raging heroin problem in my county in Massachusetts, like a lot of places do now. And we have it because when they chase it down, they discover that most of these people started their opiate addiction from prescriptions. And, people either heard from a friend how awesome these were, they tried some friends, and then they went pill shopping, and, they moved from the Vicodin. Next thing you know, they're on the Oxy. Yeah. And next thing you know, that's not good, or they lose their script, and now they're on heroin, right? So that chain, the number of people who are on heroin because they got overprescribed opiates through the system. You look at opiate sales in the pharmaceutical industry through the roof. And people are doing those, Kerry, because they're otherwise reasonable. They need to be numbed, and that's how they're doing it.
Comfortably numb, as the song goes. Mm-hmm. And there is no such thing, I would argue, because it's just an illusion and a distraction. And in the final analysis, reality might not be that great. You might not like it that much, but it's the only reality you have. And taking drugs and opiates, whatever it is. I mean, a couple of drinks, probably some marijuana, not the worst thing in the world. But when you start getting into the addictive drugs out there, and you start using drugs as a crutch, then you're in trouble, and it's not going to have a good outcome. It's going to be bad. It's really going to it's going to be difficult maintaining your grip on reality. And what are you going to do, right? It's just going to make it hard to function. And the only hope you have is by dealing with it, accepting reality for what it is, and carrying on life, figuring out ways to deal with it. I don't see any other way around it. And that's what we as people have to do. That's why if you're a nonconformist, it's really much easier to deal with these things than if you're just a person who goes along and gets along, a corporate drone, if you will.
Oh, absolutely. This is, for people who want to improve themselves, whether they want to do it because they think there's a crash coming, they want to be more resilient around, or whether they're just, living in life and they want to move to the next level. They're bored with their current level of performance and they want to become millionaires or entrepreneurs or, executives. Almost everybody discovers that they have to go through a process of coaching, seminars you might take, where the first things they do is they get you to examine your belief systems that are preventing you from making it to the next level, right? Whether you have belief systems around deserving to be poor or not deserving to get more money than you do, or to be an entrepreneur, for example, you have to unlearn almost everything that school taught you about your life, right? School teaches you should work on your weaknesses and you should have the right answer and you want to be the smartest guy in the room. And good entrepreneurs, none of that's true.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the smartest guy in the room because how are you going to learn from your team? Everything's a team effort and you work on your strengths, not your weaknesses. Good gracious. Why wouldn't you go with what you're good at? It's like trying to teach a 7-foot guy to be a point guard. Just don't do that, And so that's what what I found is really important, whether it's, a nonconformist or a contrarian or whatever that view is that this is a time to really re-examine things, be very flexible about what might or might not happen in the future, assume nothing, believe nothing, especially from the corporate media. They're selling us all kinds of things, talking points, political policies, ETFs, whatever. They're just selling. And
mutual funds,
just whatever product Wall Street has that it desperately needs to move before it pulls the rug out one more time. That sort of stuff. So that's what I found, Kerry. The most important thing people can do is to start that process of improving themselves in their skills and abilities. And some of those are external skills. I'm going to learn to shoot a little better. I'll learn to garden. I'm going to learn to run my business better. But most of what I found is important are those internal skills, the ones that really make you resilient, the ones that will allow you to survive and thrive in whatever future comes. And that's harder work because our culture doesn't support that. It's the most important stuff you can do. But our culture says, oh, no, we got pills if you're feeling bummed or you get that urge to be more. Here, take some pills. You're too happy. We have pills for that. You're too sad. We have pills for that. Feeling those extremes of emotion, if you can handle those, by the way, it's part of being human, you win consistently. And I abhor that I'm in a culture that's decided that it wants to keep everybody fat, stupid, and numb, right?
Yeah. Stupid, and numb. And that really is what it comes down to. And that's not real. And that's what you need to be avoiding. Like you say, invest in yourself, in your knowledge, in your skill set. View it as an opportunity instead of a time to retreat into fear-based reality. I think that's what it's all about. Chris, obviously people are going to want to know how to contact you, your website, other events that you're having. What's the best place to find you?
At peakprosperity.com. And if I could just plug one thing, we
Sure.
have one seminar a year that we offer. There's only a few spaces left. It's coming up April 24th, which is a Friday, 25th, 26th. It's in Rowe, Massachusetts. You can find a link to that on our website. So that's our keynote seminar. Adam Taggart and my wife, who's a phenomenal coach and therapist in her own right, we all get together, and we're capping it at 70 because we like to keep it pretty intimate, and there's just a couple spaces left. So it's coming up. Anybody interested in that? Boy, we go deep into this whole idea of how do you respond to the world as it is. We spend very little time talking about how messy the world is economically, energy, environmentally, and just go from there into saying, well, what would you do? And
Solutions. What it's about, because you got to focus on solutions. Look, Chris, If you're aware in the least bit and awake, you know the problems. They're really so apparent to anybody but the most asleep individual. So, all right, we're past that. Get through the depression. Country's in the decline. World's in the decline. Let's focus on solutions for you and your family, how you cope with it. I think it's so important. That's what we do on Financial Survival Network. Go over to the site. You'll find a link to Chris's site as well and the event. Go over there, sign up for our webinars coming up. Chris, it's always a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming on.
It's been my pleasure, Kerry.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.